take away the economy from those who rigged it. As I see it, class warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the United States of America. And of course, good morning to the world, receiving our signals via the magic of the internet created by We the People. Who did it again? We the People, now controlled by the billionaires. But you know what? The control of the billionaires, we are complicit in getting them to control this. But before I get into my monologue, let's go ahead and get to the wonderful geniuses in the studio, Senor Howard Reynolds, Jacques Van Beba.
Well, this is another fine mess you've got me involved in. Yeah, we're not hearing our headphones this morning. I don't know what's going on.
What are you not hearing?
We're not hearing our headphones.
Oh, what's wrong with your headphones?
I don't know. Jack, do you hear anything?
Well, I wasn't hearing you.
Okay, well, all right. Maybe
Okay, we'll go on without it.
Yeah, go on without me.
All right.
All right. I
can't hear that. He's saying, all right, I will go ahead and start with what's getting on my case today.
Well, let's see. I can't hear myself either. We have some issues. Yeah, we have some issues this morning. I can hear you, Jack. I can hear you, but I can't hear myself.
All right. Well, good morning, Egberto. How are you?
I am doing fine, my brother. Talk to me.
I didn't get a chance to finish my little deal, but I'll read what I got. We had some cables to run this morning.
Yeah.
Okay. School vouchers are a dope deal. And the people it hurts the worst are the students. First off, Texas has been underfunding public schools for a long time now. The truth is the oligarchs are so rich they don't need or want an educated populace. They're planning to turn citizens into serfs, and dumbing down school children is part of the plan. So they are planning to bribe you with $8,000 to switch to a private or a charter school. And when you do, well, $8,000 won't really cover the whole amount of tuition, because I think it takes about $12,000 a year per student is what they should be funded at, and they've been underfunding them for years. So they're trying to make education fail. That's just all there is to it. And,
You're absolutely right. They're trying to make education fail because, as Trump would tell all of us all of the times, I like dumb people. Why? Because you can get them to do whatever you want. I tell you what, I wasn't going to start with vouchers. Let me give you the title of the program today. The title of the program today is as follows. It says, Why School Vouchers Are Welfare for the Rich and Medicaid Cuts Affect MAGA Disproportionately. Now, I have a piece that I did with Professor Edwin Park that details why federal programs cut have outsized impact in rural America. Read MAGA America. I tell you what, this is an 18-minute piece. I think I better go ahead and get it started right away, and then we'll continue with my monologue afterwards. That way, we can get that important message out of the way. And I have a lot to say after it. Here we go. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us. Today, we're honored to have Edwin Park. Edwin Park is a researcher, professor at the Georgetown University McCourt School of Public Policy. His work primarily focused on Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, and the Affordable Care Act. And he is considered one of the nation's leading health policy experts on issues related to Medicaid and CHIP financing and the Affordable Care Act's coverage expansions. Among others, he also analyzes tax policies related to healthcare and policies related to drug pricing and private insurance markets. Professor
Edwin Park. It's my pleasure to have you on Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Look, I think the work that you are doing here is extremely important. Specifically, and I know this is research, apolitical research, but in the political realm, it is extremely important. Tell us a little bit about the study that you did relative to Medicaid and rural areas.
Sure. We looked at data from the U.S. Census Bureau and compared coverage rates, Medicaid and CHIP coverage rates in rural areas and small towns to Medicaid coverage rates in metropolitan areas. And while it's not widely understood, particularly among the public, that Medicaid is a vital lifeline for those living in rural areas and small towns. And one of the findings is that for kids and non-elderly adults, these are adults under age 65, Medicaid coverage rates were higher than they were in metropolitan areas nationwide. Seniors, it's a little different. It tends to be the case that Medicaid, which picks up nursing home care, help with Medicare premiums and cost sharing. Those coverage rates are higher in metropolitan areas than in rural areas. In 29 states, seniors in rural areas are more likely to have Medicaid than those in metro areas. So clearly demonstrates the vital importance of Medicaid in rural areas and small towns, and particularly for rural hospitals and other providers in these communities. Often they're a single provider in these communities. If a large share of their patients are covered by Medicaid, certainly any change to Medicaid could have a dramatic effect on their ability to keep their doors open and provide the services that their rural communities need.
Now, let's get a few things straight for the audience, because a lot of people don't quite understand. First of all, how is Medicare paid for? I'm sorry, Medicaid paid for? In other words, what's the mechanism that we have with Medicaid and how it gets to different communities?
So Medicaid is what's called a federal-state financial partnership. So the federal government pays for a portion of Medicaid costs, and states are responsible for the rest. On average, the federal government picks up roughly 60% or so of the costs of Medicaid, but it depends on the kind of groups covered, the kind of services covered. Those matching rates can vary, and it varies by state as well. But it is the case where the federal government pays for the majority of Medicaid costs and states are responsible for the rest. So if federal funding is changed, reduced, that means states are on the hook for picking up the difference and kicking in more of their own funding than compared to what they do now.
Now, as it stands, if I remember correctly, let's bring a little bit of the Medicaid expansion, the Affordable Care Act into the picture. The Affordable Care Act had a piece called the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. How does that compare to someone on basic Medicaid?
So the Medicaid expansion was something that was part of the Affordable Care Act. It covers nearly 21 million people today in 40 states, plus the District of Columbia. Under current law, the federal government picks up 90% of the cost of the expansion. So states are only responsible for 1 in 10 of the cost of the expansion, and it's a vital form of coverage for parents and other non-elderly adults, including some people with disabilities who otherwise weren't eligible for Medicaid. They had incomes too high for Medicaid prior to the Affordable Care Act, but too low for coverage through the new Affordable Care Act marketplaces. And this is, a key factor in terms of why non-elderly adults in rural communities tend to be more likely to have Medicaid. It's because of the Medicaid expansion, in large part because of the fact that adults in rural communities have less access to commercial insurance, other sources of coverage. And so the Medicaid expansion was a lifeline for them, their families, as well as to the rural hospitals that serve them.
Now, but and let me see if I can qualify this. Traditional Medicaid is a different program than the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. Yes or is that true? Or
no, they're all part of the same Medicaid program. So previous to the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid was primarily about covering children, their parents, seniors, and people with disabilities
below a level.
For parents, their incomes, they were generally covered around 60% of the poverty level prior to the Affordable Care Act. The Medicaid expansion provided a coverage option for parents up to 138% of the federal poverty level, as well as non-elderly, non-disabled adults without kids, and that's what is covering nearly 21 million people. But it's all part of the same Medicaid program. It's just a new coverage group that the Affordable Care Act provided, and it was a huge contributor to the improvements in health coverage nationwide since the Affordable Care Act was enacted.
Now, so the proposed cuts that Republicans are considering for Medicaid, does that mean that it'll affect all of Medicaid, meaning both the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act and those who are just simply on Medicaid?
Yes. So the Medicaid cut proposals that are currently being considered by House Republicans in particular. There was a document leaked last week that included a list of Medicaid cuts. They include a number of different cuts related to Medicaid financing. Many of them reduce federal funding for state Medicaid programs. One proposal would make it harder for states to finance their share of the cost of Medicaid. But they all have the same effect, which is reducing the amount of funding available for Medicaid. And as a result, states will have no choice but to slash their Medicaid programs in response.
Because it's clear that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One of the proposals, for example, would cap federal funding for the entire Medicaid program. So it's not just the Medicaid expansion. And by dramatically reducing federal funding, that means states would be making cuts across the Medicaid program. And so it's not just the expansion. It could be to kids, people with disabilities. It could be seniors in nursing homes. There's a whole host of possible cuts they would have to make, but it'd be across the entire program. One of the proposals is specifically targeted towards the Medicaid expansion, and that would dramatically lower the share of costs picked up by the federal government related to the expansion. That would shift costs to states, and as a result, some states would immediately have to turn off their expansions. Other states would be unable to sustain it over the long run, and as a result, those who gain coverage under the expansion would drop it. But these cuts affect the entire Medicaid program. Kids, their parents, seniors, people with disabilities, other adults, including adults who gain coverage through the expansion, they all would be negatively affected by the kind of draconian cuts that are being considered today.
Now, let me back out of the actual fact-based numbers and just ask you a human question. If they cut Medicare, what are the people who cannot qualify to do? What are they to do?
So if someone loses their health coverage or their coverage for long-term services and supports, Medicaid, plays such a vital role. It's very likely they will end up uninsured. And we know for a fact that those who are uninsured forego needed care. They have poorer health outcomes. They're more likely to be in a precarious financial state because they have medical debt, unpaid medical bills. And this could have huge negative effects in the short term, but also could have very harmful effects over the long run. Research shows, for example, that Medicaid coverage in childhood leads to better health, less incidence of disability in adulthood, higher educational attainment, finishing high school, going on to college, graduating from college, greater financial stability, higher incomes in adulthood as well. And so the converse is, if you're uninsured, if a child who would otherwise have been covered by Medicaid but is uninsured because of the potential cuts that are being considered, they would have poor life outcomes as a result. So their future outcomes would be worse, and societies would be in a poorer state, a worse state as a result, if Medicaid coverage is lost for kids. So it gives you an example about the effects that will have on people's lives if they don't have the health coverage that they do today because of some of these cuts that are being considered.
As a professor, it is imperative that it is expressed in that way. I understand, but simply put, I'd like to tell our audience here, in effect, what these cuts that are being proposed by the new Republican Congress, in effect, will kill. The professor has just stated how, but these things will kill because people will go without health care and they will die. Professor, rural areas are more dependent on both Medicaid and the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. Hospitals around the country have been closing because they are dependent on being funded, given that, as you stated, many people in rural areas are dependent on Medicaid and the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care. And thus, if they are not seeking care locally, those hospitals close. Are these things that policymakers, through information provided by professors and studies that you've run, are these things getting, first of all, to the people that need to hear it in Congress? And secondly, how much publicity are we ensuring the average American citizen know about this, given that this is something that directly affects your lives? And if it goes through, it's hell getting it back.
Yeah, I think there unfortunately has not been a public debate about the future of Medicaid and what these kind of cuts would mean for everyday Americans, not just including those in rural areas and small towns. There wasn't any discussion of Medicaid in the campaign, in the run-up to the November elections. There have been no public debate about Medicaid cuts since then. And right now, largely behind closed doors, there's discussions of these kind of draconian Medicaid cuts. This was not a factor that was considered by voters, and is largely, passing under the radar. But these cuts would affect the more than 70 million people on the Medicaid program today, including those in rural communities. And, it's very, very critical that people understand the value of Medicaid, all the roles Medicaid plays. It covers more than 60% of nursing home residents, 40% of births, about 40% of kids. It is the primary funder of mental health services in the country, the primary funder of treatment for substance use disorders, including opioid addiction. And as a result, these cuts would have a huge impact across the U.S. healthcare system. And so, there should be a full and open debate about the merits of these Medicaid cuts and their likely effect across, a whole host of Americans, those in rural communities and small towns, kids, seniors, people with disabilities, other adults, that should all be discussed before going ahead with the kind of really massive, damaging cuts that are being proposed that would cause Medicaid programs to be slashed across the country. For example, the cuts being considered total up to $2.3 trillion, according to House Republicans. That's a cut in federal funding of roughly a third over the next 10 years. And it's hard to see how states can compensate for that without having to really gut their Medicaid programs. And that means many fewer people without health coverage, without access to the services they need, including nursing home and other long-term services and supports.
The fact is that states could not recover that money at all. I mean, as it is right now, they're trying to make cuts themselves in healthcare. Now, it seems to me, if we look at the outcomes relative to the OECD, it seems like America shouldn't be cutting Medicaid expansion, but actually increase our Medicaid in general or in the aggregate. It should actually be increasing the amount that it's funded. And we're going in the completely opposite direction, which doubles on the issue. Well, I'm glad that you came on here to point these out. And I usually have one last question that pretty much says the same. What should I have asked you? What do I need to know that I didn't ask you or that our audience need to know?
Medicaid is an important form of coverage for so many Americans, and particularly in rural areas and small towns. And any policy change that could adversely affect that coverage will have a huge negative impact. And I hope that people will raise the value of Medicaid, the importance of Medicaid, so that policymakers think twice before going ahead with the kind of really damaging cuts that are being contemplated that could really take away coverage from tens of millions of low-income kids, seniors, people with disabilities, and other adults, including their parents.
Professor Edwin Park, research professor at the Georgetown University McCourt School of Public Policy. Your work is very important. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right. This is something that America needs to hear.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anyway, folks, that is our reality. And before I go to Patrick, I have a couple things that I want to say. First of all, welcome aboard, Joe, Didi. Welcome aboard. Let's say Lee, the beer cat. Didi says, I don't say MAGA, I say Republican. The reason I like to stress MAGA is for the folks that return to sanity, there needs to be a place to land, and that place to land is not always going to say they'll be a Democrat or an independent or whatever. A lot of these people are cultural Republicans, and the home needs to be maintained for our brothers and sisters that are cultural Republicans who got swept up into this dangerous fallacy. Now, I remember getting a call from I think it was a Palestinian young woman who gave me hell, and also a couple of folks in the chat who gave me hell because Kamala Harris did not buck Joe Biden on providing all these bombs that decimated Gaza and murdered in a genocidal manner all the Palestinian or over 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza. Again, Kamala wasn't the president, and Kamala wasn't, she had, there's a gravity within the presidency. Now, many of these people in Michigan and Wisconsin, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, were adamant that people in these places shouldn't vote for Kamala. They shouldn't vote third party, vote for Donald Trump. That's what many of them said. I've listened to many folks in Texas and other reliably red states say this is the place where you make your stand. This is a place where, since we won't have a value in the outcome, we can show our disdain and vote third party. That's what many said. And then, of course, there are many in blue states, 19 million, that just said, we can't stomach what the Democrats are doing by allowing Biden to continue or help with the genocide in Gaza. So we're just going to stay home. We can't vote for Donald Trump, but we'll just stay home. Every single one of you who voted for, who stayed home, every single one of you who said, I simply can't vote for Kamala because she was part of the administration that watched the genocide and provided the ammunition for the genocide. Every one of you who simply said, well, then we'll vote for Donald Trump. Every single one of you, I hope going forward that you've learned that every action has a consequence. I bring this up not only because of Trump's now musing about simply executing ethnic cleansing in Gaza by moving all the Gazians out and building beachfront property vis-a-vis the Riviera on the Mediterranean. Not only is he doing worse, I mean, there's a good likelihood when Kamala took control that Netanyahu would have gotten a different directive because she would not have been old school. I mean, she still would have had the Israel bias, but would not have been old schooled completely. But now we go further. Not that is international politics and the effects of having Donald Trump. But with local politics, you hear Republicans and Donald Trump talking about a mandate. Before the election, I specifically mentioned and tried to get into people's psyche. Even if Donald Trump won the election and swept the states, the states, he wouldn't have swept them if people voted, if those people that voted, those 19 million showed up. He wouldn't have, in fact, he wouldn't have won any of them. He wouldn't have won them, but even if he had won the election by the electoral college, he still would have massively lost the popular vote. Even those people in red states who voted third party, a portion of what's occurring that's what will occur with Medicaid that Democrats will be unable to stop. A portion of what's going to happen to Medicare that Democrats will be unable to stop. A portion of USAID that will damage our security. Our national security will be damaged by the destruction of the USAID. They would not have been able to look into the American eyes and say we have a mandate because the mandate would not have been there. Yes, they would have won the electoral college, but once again, he would have lost the national vote, the popular vote. Elections have consequences. Staying home has consequences. Voting third party in a critical time has consequences that many will pay, not just with their security, not just with their health, but with their life. I saw a TikTok that, I kind of felt sort of bad about it, but they played back all our brothers and sisters of Palestinian descent in Michigan and Wisconsin saying, definitely do not vote for Kamala and don't vote third party. Vote for Trump. And people say, no, Trump actually believes in genocide. Trump is really a white nationalist. The Venezuelans that voted for him thinking they're Venezuelan families that would be able to remain in the United States got a wake-up call. He's ending the program and sending them back to Venezuela. Latinos who thought their approximation to the majority population would give them cover, are learning that when that cop stops people, he doesn't first have probable cause whether they have their papers or not. He assumes by racial profiling. And guess what, brother Latinos who voted for Donald Trump? You fit the profile. You fit the profile. Your vote matters. And listening to sanity and critical thinking matters. And we can keep making mistakes after mistakes after mistakes, but the degradation of the nation, the constancy of moving our wealth to the top, the constancy in having us been pilfered by the upper classes, by the billionaires, it's not the doings of the billionaires, it's our doing. It's who we decide to believe, it's who we decide based on evidence to follow. And we missed the bowl. We missed the boat. We missed the ball royally, royally in this last election. And the thing about it is, the same people who voted for Brother Trump, I'm not going to call Trump brother, the same people who voted for Trump are the ones who will feel the majority of the pain because it's coming. And Doge, remember, all they're trying to do right now is carve out monies. They got to get about 100 billion something dollars this year alone to carve out money for a tax cut. All right, my phones are completely filled right now, but I needed to get that in. Let's go to Patrick. Come on, brother Patrick.
Some of this will be a repeat, but I will remind everybody that the last tax cut, people that had a household of two people and the income of approximately $100,000, their tax cut, I think, saved them $40 a month. It might have been $40 a paycheck, I can't remember. But then if you made $500,000 a year, it saved you $50,000 a year, which is nearly $5,000 a month, or $1,250 a week. So you can ask yourself, okay, is giving up Social Security, watching my parents die a tortured death in a subpar nursing home, or having my neighbors that might be single parents or have a more challenging child that they might need the aid that we're giving them, getting rid of that is that really worth the $40 a paycheck? Or
No,
$40?
no, it's not worth it. But I want to make it more grave than what you just said, Patrick. You remember that $40 that you're talking about? The increase in cost that was created by the business class, that took away that $40 that you got in a tax cut. The increase in price in products took away that, and that increase in price went directly into the pockets of the wealthy. So that tax cut played out in many ways. One, they got the big tax cut like you just mentioned, but two, they got more income because even the tax cut received by the middle class was taken back by the business class with higher prices. And even as their prices weren't as high as they took out of the system. Continue, my brother.
Yeah, you can look at it all as a shell game. If we do export a large part of our workforce because we don't like their status, well, if we do that and there's a labor shortage here, then naturally wages should go up, but they won't, because when they tell you you can't retire until you're 72, or you can't retire at all because the Social Security benefits are going to be so small, what that's doing is that's going to keep people that really can't work in the workforce longer, which will drive those wages back down. Not only
Exactly.
does Social Security keep, not only does Social Security keep seniors out of poverty, but it keeps them from having to work until they die, and that in turn allows our young people to enter the workforce in a more skilled job earlier.
No, no, Patrick, you nailed it. Patrick, my lines are filled, so I got to go. So I'll have to see you at 3 to continue this. But here's the thing. Thank you for bringing that $40 up. We have somebody in the chat, actually Eric, talking about bad inflation. They just don't get it. Again, willful ignorance is something that we have to really mitigate. But thank you, my brother. Have a great one.
Can I give you one? Can I give you one more fact?
Yes, sir. Go.
Okay. The person leading Doge has no idea about science, and USAID is based on science. And when Neil deGrasse Tyson was interviewing him in a roundabout way, he started quizzing him on the scientific method, and Musk had no idea what he was asking him.
Okay, wait.
And
Let me.
so,
Let me. I want to correct something about Musk because this is important. I am tired of journalists calling Musk a genius. I am utterly tired. There is nothing, there is no genius in Musk. We have a tendency to equate having capital and money with people's genius. They are not the same. Trump, Musk has a lot of smart people working for him. But I'm glad you mentioned that when Tyson interviewed him, it actually clearly showed that he isn't really that smart. But capitalism doesn't require smart. It just requires a certain way of holding on to capital. Thank you so kindly, Patrick. I'll talk to you at 3.
thank you.
All right, let's go to Harry. Harry, real quick, I'm really filled on my lines.
Yeah, Musk is a hustler, basically what it is. Thank you, Patrick, for all that enlightenment on all that. And, so, with like you were saying, Roberto, they're going to pass this tax cut with budget reconciliation, like you said earlier in the week, and like they did last time. There won't be any Democratic votes. So, basically, it's going to come down to, as far as Medicaid being cut, the Democrats don't have the votes to slow it down in the House, or to stop it in the House and in the Senate from these cuts from taking place, correct?
We don't have any, again, and that's what we try to educate folks about before the election. No, they don't. They are in limbo right now. Okay? The only wait, hold on. The only thing that we can do is starting to get people to vociferously uh, argue their case so that we put
Yeah,
some fear in Republican. But that's a lot harder to do when you're
yeah,
already in office.
right. When they argue that they will change some Republicans' minds and they won't go with Trump, and then it'll get stopped that way. Now, yeah, you're right, Roberto. I did vote third party. I registered voter I still registered in California, and I did that because I felt that
Look.
allowing that.
I don't want my brother. That's water under the
Right.
bridge.
I know.
That is a
It is. You're
mistake.
right.
That is a mistake. Have a
Yeah, I
wonderful
know, but
day, Harry.
I just couldn't do it. All right, take care. Have a good weekend, guys.
You too, my brother. Peace. Let's go to Bruce. Come on in, Bruce.
Good morning, Alberto. This will be off subject, so let it be fast. Yesterday, Governor Abbott said he was offering up the Texas prison cells for holding areas for migrants. We already have overcrowded prisons as it is, and for-profit prison systems are probably clapping about this and trying to put extra wings on to make some money, but I think that's ridiculous. Second, I saw an interview yesterday with somebody in Panama who echoed what you said. They said they're not going to roll over from Trump. And third, and very fast, you can take the letters in Musk's last name and rearrange them to spell S-K-U-N. No matter how it's spelled, it's still scum. I'm done.
Thank you, my brother. Bruce, you're a great guy. All right, let's go to brother Jimmy. Come on in, Jimmy.
Good morning, Alberto. On the issue of Medicaid, our governor, Greg Abbott, refuses to take the Medicare Advantage that the federal government offers, and the federal government was paying like 90% of it. County Judge Ed Emmett told me that he had a meeting with Governor Abbott, and Abbott told him, if you even bring up the topic, our meeting is over with. So we don't have the Medicare Advantage because of Governor Greg Abbott.
You're absolutely right. I've already called them all murderers. All of those people in Austin who don't bring that up, they're looking at all of their MAGA supporters in rural areas and killing them. Unfortunately, the MAGA supporters don't quite believe that these people they vote for are doing exactly that, my dear brother Jimmy. They're killing their own and they're killing us all. Continue, brother.
Uh, One more topic. Solitary confinement in Texas prisons is awful. They got men in there for 5, 10, 20 years. The United Nations said it should be for no more than 15 days. And we do have a House bill this time, 1409, by Representative Terry, I can't think of her last name, that will reduce it down to like 3 days. And I urge people to get behind that and get behind reforming solitary confinement in Texas prisons. I'm going to be working on that for the next several months until we get
Thank you
some
very much.
change.
You have a history of working on that. In fact, you were on the Donahue show talking about that issue in the early days, and you have continued working with that. You keep up the good work, and that's what it takes, brother. Keeping on and keeping on. Thank you so kindly, Jimmy, for calling in and for all that you do, sir.
Thank you, Ed Grota. That's Donahue show was about school corporal punishment, not solitary confinement.
What I meant is you are doing your activism all this while, So thank you, my brother.
Thank you too. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye. All right. Before I go to David, I just want to, well, let me just go to David before I say this. Come on in, David.
Oh, thanks, Egberto. Yeah, and I got to agree with you. A couple of calls ago, you were talking about, well, I was going to call him Doge, but Elon Musk as being able to do an accounting for America. Well, this guy has already cost us far more than he tried to save. Think about, you remember the very first action Trump did on Inauguration Day was to fire the FAA, the Aeronautics
Yes.
the Aeronautics Administration fired him on the first day. And then we end up with these crashes, crash after crash. And that's thanks to Elon Musk. Elon Musk was being sued by the FAA for polluting Texas. His rockets are blowing up and spreading not just trash, but poisonous trash all up and down the coast, right?
Yes.
$600 million was the suit, and he has this guy fired, and bam, all of a sudden, even if there's no problem with aeronautics today, the ridership is going to fall and stay falling until those rats are out of there. And the other thing is raiding the Treasury. How expensive is that? How much confidence do we have to put back into whether or not our money is worth anything when all of a sudden a crazy guy and 4 unsecured young men show up in the Treasury, cause a fight, and then are able to live in there for about a week? And how much value, and they've got everybody's social security numbers now, all our data, just 5 guys, and they haven't been run out of there yet.
And they're
And
hackers. And they are hackers with different personalities around the internet. It's shameful. Go ahead, sir.
yeah, well, how much value are we going to have in the American dollar if these guys are sitting in place in there? You know, basically, I believe that climate change is far more important than even that. And so we better start cleaning up the planet and go off budget doing it. Their money is not going to be worth anything anyway. They're not going to spend it to get it done. We need to get it done. So we just come up with our own money or our own method of cleaning up the planet without using money.
Well, I mean, a lot of other countries are starting to take, BRICS. BRICS is now at least 8% larger than the G7. Think about that. There's a new world order, and Musk. It's almost like Musk is complicit in bringing down our country. I mean, but we'll see. Hey, David, I got to go, but thank you so kindly for you.
BRICS, though, isn't going to be that environmental. BRICS are not environmentalists. That's Russia. That's China.
Exactly. But you know what? BRICS is.
Polluters.
But here's what BRICS is.
Pollution.
BRICS is
We
BRICS
got
is
to slow.
all. I agree. I agree. I agree. But what I'm
So
saying is that's what he's doing. He will bring the ascendancy of BRICS, and BRICS is already in all the countries around the world that we have forgotten to be a part of. But thank you very much, David. Let's continue this talk tomorrow. Let's go to
well,
Derek. Come on in, Derek. Brother Derek, come on in. Okay, it's going to be here in a little bit. Let's see. I am pretty sure we'll hear from Derek in a minute. All right. I think it's there we go. Derek, you're on.
Okay, hey, there it is. You know what? I want to thank you for being a fireman. Politics done right, family. Thank you all. But this has turned into a wildfire now. You know, the people seems to be stuck in a state of suspended animation and a state of arrested development. Can't you see, America, that the house is burning? You prostituted your votes for money, paper money at that. When the fire hits that money, what do you think is going to be left of your money? It's just
Ashes.
going to be smoke and ash. Thank you, brother.
Look, Derek, I appreciate you. I mean, that statement is more valuable than you might feel, because I'm telling you, it is a wildfire now, and it needs to be arrested and arrested quickly. Again, I wish people saw how the rest of the world are seeing what we are doing, and they are
Mm-hmm.
in shock. But thank you so kindly, Derek. You have a wonderful rest of your day. All right, let's go to brother Jim. Come on in, Jim.
Good morning, Egberto. How are you today?
I am doing fine, sir. Please talk to me.
Well, I was listening to your show yesterday. No, not yesterday, Wednesday. And it was during like the last call with the Politics Done Right, all-time favorite caller, and your personal favorite, Brian. And Brian, of course, was talking about the immigration crisis and how saying that they deported criminals, and you responded with, what crimes have they committed? And what makes them criminals? And Brian said that they were being here. And I believe you responded with, how does that make them being criminals? And that just
Exactly.
kind of baffled me. And truthfully, I wanted to respond yesterday, but I didn't have time. But like, what I'm trying to say, don't get me the wrong way, I'm on Brian's side. Because here's the thing: if they're here illegally, then they are criminals because they didn't come here through the proper process. They came here by sneaking in through the border. Well, nobody realizes this.
Okay, and let me tell you that you're right. Okay, first of all, let me just tell you that you are absolutely right. But here's where I have grace, empathy, etc. I understand the genesis of our country. I understand how we were formed. I understand all there is to know about what made us who we are. Okay? And while on this issue, you, my dear brother Jim, want to follow the letter of the law, they are criminals for having crossed the border because they didn't follow the Western procedure of getting into this country, while we didn't follow, or not we, but the settlers didn't follow the procedures of not coming into another land and committing genocide and taking it by force. These people that have snuck into this land, all they want is a job. All they want is financial security. All they're doing is what the pilgrims and the settlers did. The only difference is that they are not coming to kill. The settlers did. So, my friend, you are right under the law. Under human law is what I'm talking about. And I say to those who are able to get here through the difficulty that it gets to get here, if they're not committing crimes, if they're making us a better society, which they are, I wish they would all stop working for a week so that we could see what they bring. And look, I am an immigrant, but look, I wish they could stop working for a week. Sir, you are right in the law. You are wrong in humanity. You are wrong in history.
How am I wrong in humanity? I don't understand.
You are absolutely wrong in humanity. If you look at what's occurring with immigrants today, under what both Biden and Donald Trump are doing with immigrants, instead of trying to find a solution for a problem that we created, sir, Do you understand, sir? Wait. Do you understand rice policy? Yes or no? International rice policy. Do you understand it? Yes or no?
No,
Do you
I don't
understand?
understand that.
Do you understand fruit policy? Yes or no? So my answer to you is the following. If you look at the policies that we have instituted in all these nations south of the border, much of the people that are coming over here are caused because of the policy that we effected. And then at the same time now, when this occurs, you want to throw them out, sir. There's something called humanity, honesty, and much more. And I'm not blaming you, Jim, on sir. I'm not blaming
I'm
you.
not
I'm blaming your ignorance. Okay?
my ignorance. Like, I don't think you really understand. Like, the
No, no.
people who are
Sir. I am blaming your ignorance because you have allowed yourself to be taken with invalid information from the folks that you follow. I ask you with humility.
that goes
I hold on, hold on. I ask you with
man.
humility, sir. We don't talk at the same time. I ask you with humility
I'm sorry.
I ask you with humility that instead of trying to just take it via how you have learned things on the different news programs that you've gotten, to open your mind that there probably are other reasons and rationale. You got 10 seconds and then I got to keep going, sir.
Okay, but what about the people who are coming here illegally with not good intentions, like cartel
I
members that
agree.
think are going?
Sir, I agree with you, sir. Sir, we are on the same page there. We are on the same page there. Okay? I promise you. On that case, we throw the bad people out. We
Okay,
throw the bad.
so- okay, okay, get rid of the bad people. I get it, but like, we can't just let them be here.
Yes,
Okay,
we can. Yes, actually, yes, we can. I tell you, Jim, call tomorrow. Because I can talk to you. Jim, call me back tomorrow on this issue. I promise we'll talk longer. Okay?
to the people who came here.
Let's go to Moses.
Good
Moses, you
morning,
got
my brother.
30, 30 seconds, my sister. 30 seconds. I don't have a lot of time.
No, number one, we are human beings. God put human beings on earth. We didn't come from Mars. Number two, this is a nation of immigrants. This man should shut his mouth and know that he is the first illegal alien in America, and he's the first one to be thrown back out to Europe where he came from. Number three, this world belongs, again, this human earth belongs to people, not to just any. It is for human beings, and for him to say that these people, sir, are you an animal? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Moses. Have a wonderful day. Let's go to Johnny. Johnny, I haven't heard from you in a long time. I've been asking about you. How you doing?
Personal issues, hopefully they'll be resolved this week. Ronald Reagan understood the difference between desperate people doing desperate things and people coming with criminal intent. And what Brian and Jim both fail or refuse to acknowledge is that reality. Desperate people are not criminals. They are desperate people. And by the way, if they're so getting their pennies in a knot, how come they don't get their pennies in a knot about when we kidnapped Africans and brought them over here against their will?
You nailed it. Johnny, I got to let you go, but you nailed it, Johnny. Johnny, you nailed it.
Bye.
Bye. Let's go to Bart. Come on in, Bart, real quick. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, Johnny, who put those people into slavery? Anyway, back to Derek, the money that was spent and wasted, I think Kamala gave Beyonce $2 million.
All right, you don't understand you don't understand economics. I got to go to Brian. Come on in, Brian.
Dollars.
Brian, you're on. Real quick, 30 seconds.
I'm here. Now, you don't know history because the Spanish conquered Mexico, South America, Florida, United States, all the way from Florida to California. Okay? Do you understand history? The Spanish
All right.
conquered Mayans.
Thank you very much, Brian. Let's go to Mike. I told you 30 seconds. Got to go to Mike. Number one. Mike, line number one.
Yeah, hey, Berto. Talking about immigration here in the last few minutes, several topics today. Even under Biden, the the immigration flow during the Biden years was as much, or really more, led by the Republican-dominated U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They had an organized campaign. You can look it up, Google it, Project for Liberty. They gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to Republicans, much less to Democrats. And then after the surges, towards the beginning of 24,
10 seconds.
The chamber finally said, hey, we think we've got enough workers. There was an announcement about that. So this has been this illegal immigration that has helped drive our economy as hot as it is, has been led by the Republican business community.
Thank you very much, Mike. Got to go. Let's jump to the studio.
Oh, very interesting show again today. Actually, I can hear myself, and our microphones are working. The Portuguese and the Nigerians were in cahoots with slavery that far back. Now, Jack, what you got?
Patrick called back and said that a lot of these immigrants are asylum seekers, and that makes them legal.
I'm glad that you
Good
said
point.
that is a very good point. Thank you very much, Patrick. You're a genius. Anyway, I want to call out Eric Hayes, Billy Irwin, Billy Allison Irwin, Eric Hayes, Mark, Ali Curtis, Tinker, Mark, and all of you that are in the chat. Thank you for being here. Great discussion in the chat as well. Folks, look, we are going to have to do some critical thinking that affect us all. All of us are in the same boat. I repeat, we're all in the same boat. The chaos that is happening is directed from the very top 1% of these folks, because if we are fighting each other, they win. I gave a little talk at at a club recently. I'm going to post, but let me tell you, folks, we are in the same boat. Do not be fooled, and don't let this discussion make you believe that I am not on all of our sides. Anyway, folks, look. You can get the rest of the program at politicsandright.com/newsletter. Politicsandright.com/newsletter. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics and Right. And you guys know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out!
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. A New